Why most Americans are more burnt out and depressed than ever before. I want to talk about exactly why most Americans are stressed out, burnt out, have very little to no energy to do anything outside of working 40 hours a week, plus another 10 hours doing Uber or DoorDash or one of these other side hustles and just working endlessly with barely any free time to do anything that you might enjoy outside of work. So I also want to talk about what I believe to be the best solution for this that I think that more young Americans, especially young Americans, should focus on, and of course consider creating an escape plan, right? So of course the biggest issue that most Americans face nowadays is we're working endlessly and we don't really have third spaces anymore, right? So before, and this isn't even just 80s or 90s, but even like 2000s and even early 2010s, we had third places that we go to outside of work or school and home. So a place where you can go, you are just hanging out, you can meet people, and there was a lot more openness to communicating with people, and there was less animosity towards one another. People were more open to having friendly conversations, and it was also just a great way to just kind of hang out and socialize with your friends. But nowadays, the average American, they go to work 40 hours a week, and if that isn't enough to live comfortably on their own, then you have to work an extra couple hours doing something else on the side, and then the little free time that you have, typically you're just doom scrolling on social media just because there's maybe like an extra couple hours left, and then you gotta go to sleep and wake up to go to work again the next day. So the most frustrating thing about all of this is, despite working endlessly, the cost of living just continues to rise up. There is the massive housing crisis, and more young Americans just do not feel optimistic about the future in America, unfortunately. And so that is regardless of how patriotic that you want to be, because even if you really believe in the American dream, you have to work a lot harder than ever before to create that same quality of life that your parents or grandparents had, before, where cost of living was a lot more reasonable. So even just like an average home, you got to make like 6 figures or even like 7 figures and then if you want to get like your own apartment, then you got to pay like $1,500 to $2,000 a month just to live in like a basic shoebox almost. So yeah, there's a lot of roadblocks in the way, and then also there is the huge risks when it comes to getting married and having kids, especially for the men. It's highly rigged against men where your woman can basically just divorce you at any point and just take half of your income. So that's the other thing that is causing a lot of young men to kind of, I guess you could say, walk away from or detach from life, or disconnect, or whatever the word is. I can't think of the exact word for whatever reason, but I guess you could say opting out of the system, kind of to their best of the ability. So more young men are staying home, living with their parents. This is something that I've noticed with a lot of like young guys that I've worked with at like jobs that I've had. A lot more of them are just living with their parents, and then outside of work they mainly just like play video games and watch movies. And in a way, I don't really blame them, but I believe that you should do the best that you absolutely can, regardless of how hard it is, to try and make it as best to your ability. So my personal recommendation, if you want any chance of living a somewhat comfortable life, is you of course want to always aim for something beyond just a regular 9-to-5 job. So I would say at the very least, if you are going to do the regular 9-to-5 thing, then you want to do the job hopping thing every year or two. And I know that's not necessarily ideal for most people. It requires that you got to change your environment constantly, and you got to like learn a bunch of new things. And I know that a lot of employers kind of look down on that. But understand that you are not you're not operating in the same playing field that these older Gen Xers and Boomers were operating in with corporate America and stuff. So if you hop to different jobs, every year or two, then you're generally going to make a lot more money compared to the really loyal employee that stays at one company for, 5, 10 years or whatever, right? So if you stay at one job, let's say you are, working in a grocery store, you're a cashier or you stock shelves, maybe you'll get like a 50-cent raise every 18 months or something like that, or a year or 2 years. But with the rise of inflation going as fast as it is, up, constantly upwards, you are not going to be making as much money. You're not going to have as much spending power despite the fact that you are getting paid more. So when you factor in the cost of living constantly going up, you're generally not going to be making as much money, most likely, unless if something changes and, it just happens to go down. But it's very unlikely that that's going to happen because the elites in power on both the right and left keep continuing to print trillions of dollars every single year, which is making it harder for young Americans to own a home, own land, and of course, follow that traditional path of getting married, having kids, and all that stuff right there. So that is, I believe, the main way that you can combat, the simplest way that you can combat cost of living is just always look for the next position. You want to be, I guess you could say, hypergamous when it comes to jobs. So they say women are hypergamous when it comes to men. They're always looking for that next bigger and better deal. But you want to be that way when it comes to jobs. You always want to be looking for the next higher paying position. And if not that, then you either want to go into a trade. So that's something that is not likely to be taken over by AI, at least within the next couple of years. So that is something you go into. Anything that involves like physical labor is generally going to pay more compared to like a regular retail position or in a restaurant. So that's something you can go for. Or I would say that the best option for most people is going to be figuring out a way to earn an income online. So whether that is working a regular remote job and maybe you decide to live somewhere where the cost of living is super low, then that's of course one option you could take. But I believe the best approach is going to be starting some sort of online business because you can make a lot more money compared to like most jobs nowadays, right? So if you learn something like, online marketing, or you learn copywriting, you learn how to use AI, then these are all things that can make you a lot of money. And that is where the gold rush is nowadays. Of course, there's also social media. If you grow a YouTube channel, you grow a following online, then there are many different ways you can monetize any platform that you build up, whether it's a YouTube channel, Instagram, or TikTok. Anything that you are knowledgeable in, you could simply turn on the camera and start talking about that topic. And so when you acquire a following of people that know, like, and trust you, then you can make a pretty lucrative income online if you optimize it correctly. So that is going to be my personal recommendation for most people. In my case, what I do is I do digital marketing, and I also do YouTube content creation, right? So the benefit is if you promote a product, the benefit of digital marketing is you don't have to create anything yourself. You don't have to worry about creating products. You don't have to worry about shipping out physical inventory. And this is also very affordable. So you don't have to invest thousands of dollars to do this. This isn't like a pitch, by the way. Yes, I do have a training that goes over this. However, this is just one option that you consider going with. But the benefit is you can do this for, even in many cases, for free. You could sign up to an affiliate program, and if you know how to get videos popping off on TikTok, for example, then all you really need to learn how to do is just get views and send those views over to a link in bio or a link in description, depending on what platform that you're posting on. So that is ultimately going to be the simplest path for average everyday people to create consistent income online. And the benefit with that is you could live anywhere in the world. So maybe you decide that America isn't really the place for you and you feel like you can't get ahead no matter what you do. Well, with an online business, you can live wherever you want. So maybe you decide to have another home base somewhere in Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, the UAE. There are plenty of places you could locate to where there's less animosity towards one another. The cost of living is a lot more reasonable and people are more friendly in general. So maybe you also decide to date and get married and have kids in another country. I truly believe that it's going to be a lot easier when you have an online business and you have that location freedom to create the ideal lifestyle that you want. You are going to be much more relaxed. You're going to have more flexibility. And that, in my opinion, is the ultimate thing that young Americans should, of course, strive for, is location freedom above all else. You do not need the fanciest car. You don't need the most expensive house. You just need flexibility to where you can decide where you want to plant your flag and where you want to start a family, if that is, of course, your goal. If you are mainly just looking to stay single, then maybe you might just decide to live as a complete minimalist in the US. Maybe you want to stay close to your family. Well, in that case, your goal, your purpose in life could maybe just be supporting your existing family that you have. Maybe you want to provide better support for your parents. Maybe you want to spend more free time with your family. In my case, that was one of the biggest reasons why I got into the online business space and why I got into digital marketing specifically, was because I did not want to miss out on holidays. I did not want to miss out on birthdays. I wanted to spend more time with family, and I was never interested in having the nicest car. I was never materialistic in any sense. And although that's what America mainly promotes, it just never vibed with me at all. So I've always been all about experiences and just having free time to pursue things that I actually enjoy, and enjoying hobbies and all that. And that's always been my main interest in life. So that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you think of this. If you want to check out what I do specifically to earn an income online, check out the free training down below. Otherwise, give this a thumbs up and take care. See you in the next one.